Hi, everybody. Morning or evening. Evening, Gidong. Hi, everybody who joined so far. I guess we'll wait a few more minutes. Hi, Ofer and Saurabh.
Hey, good morning.
Morning.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Great.
I see Yedong. Yedong is also online, and I don't know who this the other person joined. I'm not sure who he or she is. Can you introduce yourself, please? And NEAI is the handle. Maybe you're muted. Okay. So I guess I'm not sure if I want to go to brief introduction, but I see all the familiar faces from last time or in names, other than one. So I was just curious who that is, especially if we are gonna be tracking contributors and so on. Okay. One more time. Could you introduce yourself, please? Any AI is the handle.
Yes. Hi.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Bogdan. I'm with Software AG in San Diego.
Sorry, come again. Your name is?
Bogdan, B-O-G-D-A-N.
Okay. Could you please type it into the chat? No. Sorry. So just want to make sure that I track everybody, who joined. Bogdan. Okay. Okay. Okay, so let's get started. We're already 5-7 minutes into it. So I did share the agenda on the GitHub channel. Hopefully everybody saw it, sees that. Actually, let me share. By the way, the meeting is recorded as per agreement last time. I basically, I'm assuming I would like everybody to acknowledge and give consent for recording into this meeting because, that's how it goes. So I think in the future in invites, I think it'll be more maybe written like automatically. If you're done into the meeting, you give your consent to be recorded and so on.
So Milan, is the video also recorded?
Yes.
Or is it just audio?
Video, everything, whatever we do is sharing screen. If we share the screen, everything is recorded.
All right.
So that's about.
Yeah, I'll probably stop my video then because I'm in a lab. Somebody might stop by. So I'll rather avoid
of
that.
course, if you don't to share something through video, yeah, I'm not saying you should have your video, but same goes for us. Anything on the whiteboard behind you, you should turn around and see what is on the whiteboard, including me here.
Actually, what we have on your whiteboard is very relevant.
Yeah,
to this whole topic.
That's right. That's related to this discussion, actually. Okay, so agenda. Just quick updates. Main agenda is really to go to the statement of work and really review statement of work, so we can really get to the potentially final or close to final draft that we can then share with the steering committee and get really approved. This is our statement of work, and this is what we're going to deliver as a working group, and with a clear exit criteria and so on. So that's a focus of this meeting. The link to the document has been shared in a GitHub channel, and so I'm going to now share my screen. Am I sharing already? No. Okay. So. Okay, share. Okay, you see this, right? So as per agenda and some action items from last time, I did update the README in the working groups Edge directory with some more details about as we discussed last time. I did some people that are participating in this working group as per attendance so far. We can update this as it goes, and then some basic meeting logistics and so on. So if you have any comments on this, or you want to update this README and we add more kind of content for as a general information, please let me know, or comment or raise issue in a repo, and then we can address and adjust. Not that. Okay, so going back to the statement of work, this is the document. I see lots of people are in anonymous beaver, hamster, kraken, and squirrel are looking. So okay. I don't know how many of you had a chance to review this or go through it, or had a comment, any comments to provide. I don't see any comments actually directly in the document. But if nobody has any questions or anything, I guess then the next step would be. Sorry, my eye is just somehow watery this morning because of some cream I put around, and it just cannot stop drizzling. So if nobody has any comments, then I guess the approach would be that we go through it, and me and Ofer, and we read and we kind of explain rationale for the statement of work and what we are gonna sign up to do, and then hopefully we come with a conclusion at the end of the meeting that this is it, or we need to extend more. So if no questions or comments or directly that anybody else could raise right now, then I would proceed with just going through a document.
I think that maybe what we should do, because statement of work had to be delivered to the SIGs and the steering as a first step. We need to of give a date to ourselves. Let's say we talk about this meeting, we give one more meeting, and if there aren't any other comments, it means that on the next meeting we're going to approve it and give it to the steering committee for approval.
Right.
We need to.
It's our first deliverable, really. We need to make sure we have a clear definition of what we are going to be working on. And I agree with Ofer. We need to have some deadlines, and by when we need to finish this. So hopefully we finalize not later than next meeting. As general.
Makes sense.
Make sense? Okay.
Yeah, no, I agreed. Yep.
Okay. So I'll Ofer, do you want to talk through it? Because you kind of wrote most of this. We did edit it yesterday together somewhat. But I think I will ask you to kind of go through it then.
Sure. Okay, so this document is a kind of structured as a typical statement of work. So some of these chapters are there because they need to be. This is part of the template. Like the first chapter, the purpose. So purpose is very generic, and it's kind of talking about what we're planning to do. So
I gave you control of a screen, Ofer, so if you want to.
Okay, cool. So basically running ONNX modems on a wider set of platforms is required, and there is a class of platforms that we refer as Edge, and part of the work would actually be to classify what falls into Edge. In the previous face-to-face, we already saw that somewhat our definition and the definition, for example, of Huawei are different, and both Milan and I believe that we can encompass all of that under Edge. We just need to partition it to different types of devices. Of course, you cannot treat a IoT device the same way that you're treating an inference edge server. So we need to define the range of edge, and we need to, inside edge, somehow partition it to what we refer as profiles. So the purpose is to explore what are the implications and constraints on these platforms and projected into some of ONNX aspects. for example, operations, as we're going to talk, and provide these recommendations to the SIG. That's basically, it's a very high-level description of what we're going to do. Scope chapter tries to capture it, again, at a very high level, what are the things that the working group is going to touch. By the way, if someone wants to add something to the purpose or the scope, feel free to say now, and we can just edit it here. So we would like to promote the usage of ONNX on edge devices by working with the various SIGs and working groups. Down there at the collaboration part, there is a list of potential other groups that we're going to collaborate. So we would like to create an end-to-end specification for edge devices, covering what is the device, the profile, the compliance. All of this falls under end-to-end specification. We would like to identify scenarios and use cases that are applicable to edge devices. This is where we have a document from Huawei, which is a very good starting point to map down these use cases. And I believe if we look at these scenarios and use cases, we can map them into profiles. These are things that you expect an IoT device profile to do, and these are the things that you would expect a mobile phone, for example, to do. So when we capture profiles, we tie them to use cases, to a group of use cases, and maybe some use cases are relevant to more than one profile. That's still legitimate. I think, in my view at least, one of the major things that we have to work on is compliance for edge devices, because this is feedback that we're getting from customers, and I believe that others are getting as well, that it's important to define some frame, some structure that would be able to say, this is an ONNX model, and I expect a compliant device to meet this behavior. And this behavior in terms of mostly accuracy. We're going to get to the next point soon, but in my view, at least, compliance is more on in terms of functionality and accuracy, at least in the scope of the ONNX foundation.
Ofer, can I interrupt you on something tangential?
Sure.
You mentioned the other spec from Huawei earlier.
Mm-hmm.
From what I understood, the proposal was to have another ONNX runtime.
No, not that spec of the runtime. The other one, the previous one, where they shared.
In the GitHub channel, I think it's the first comment. Yes.
So if
it's a first comment in the GitHub channel. Yeah, you can see the old proposal.
So this one, right? That was where is that?
The first one,
Go
I guess.
The previous meeting we discussed. So this one, consolidate with document from Yidong.
Yes.
There is a, if I recall correctly, there's a pull request to add it into the edge, right?
Yes, there is a pull request, and that is this document. Oh, that is the pull request, exactly. That was Howard transcribed into MD and document, but that is really this document, right? And the pull request.
Yes. Basically the same thing.
Same thing, yes.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think what Ofer is talking about is really that is a very good starting point for the use. I mean, descriptions of the kind of profiles and use cases that we would want to kind of define, anyways, right? Right, Ofer?
Yeah, maybe we should merge that pull request.
Yeah, so that pull request, I was looking at it and I'm going to provide some comments actually as to where to pull it. It seems to me that that document is kind of capturing the discussion and that happened in the previous workshop. So I was thinking the document really should be description. Okay, here's the proposal that was discussed in say December workshop, and make it into the workshop directories, right? So we have kind of, this is
maybe if you go to that to GitHub for a second,
yeah,
and go into the Edge folder. Maybe what I suggest, if it's fine by people, is to add a folder called discussion materials, or something like documents, or something generic that people just pour kind of. I think discussion material is kind of the best thing.
okay, that's fine with me as well. I think there is a pull request. Those are the two pull requests.
Yeah, actually, I want to update my update something on the original MD file, but Howard, he didn't give me the authorization. I cannot change his pull request, so I just uploaded a new one, and yeah, I just start a new pull request. But these two are very similar, so just merge anyone is fine.
Oh, okay. No, this actually, they seem to be different. You're talking here about the
yeah, a little bit different, yes. A little bit. My version is a newer version, and Howard, his version is an older one. But most parts are the same.
Oh, okay. So I guess to at least this document from Howard, I interpreted this as a basically the the one that came from your original document on a Google Doc,
yes,
right?
Yes.
And
yes.
that one seemed like something that was really covering material or discussion that happened in not the last March workshop, but the one in December.
Yes.
Right? Okay. That's my understanding. Okay, that's good. So okay, I guess both of them, I think, would need to be then placed in some what Offer is suggesting seems fine to me, like discussion materials or something, and then and then we'll do that, right?
Yeah. Later on, we're going to probably pull from the folder of discussion materials into a folder of documents that when we create, for example, description of scenarios, description of profiles. So we kind of separate between things that people put there versus things that we created as official delivery, in a sense. This is,
Right.
in my view, why we need to create this separated folder.
Yes,
So
I
that
agree.
people would have a place
folder.
just to push things, whatever they want to discuss about.
Yeah. So yeah, and actually to that end, going back now to the actual document. I mean, we are having the section that is about deliverables, right? So I'm guessing there will be potentially an area or subdirectory there called, deliverables or documents or whatever we decide to call it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, Offer it then. Okay, sounds good. Yeah, thanks for the slight digression.
Sure. So maybe what we need to do, and we'll probably do it sometime today, is to create this folder and do the pull request into that folder so that people would be able to review these documents. Okay. So going back to compliance. So compliance, part of the problem that I've been having for a long period of time with ONNX is that there is no defined compliance criteria. Like people can be compliant with ONNX without even supporting even a single operation and use the logo. And I believe that the Modern Zoo, SIG, and others are already working on creating some compliance criteria. And we should talk with these groups, and we should look at compliance for edge devices, mainly in terms of subset of operations, the way that I see it, to define a subset of operations which is applicable to edge devices. Some of the operations in ONNX are, what's the number now? 130? I forgot what's the updated number. Anyways, a large set of these operations may not be applicable to the scenarios or the use cases which are relevant to edge devices, which means that probably edge devices should not support this because it's not optimal for them to support these operations. So our goal would be, after we solve out scenarios and use cases, to start taking the group of ONNX operations and create a subset. Say, these are the operations that we believe edge devices need to support. And I think this definition, I forgot to mention it, but one of the things that we talked about in the face-to-face, it needs to be some kind of an ongoing work. Okay, we're going to deliver the first iteration. Maybe a year from now, there's going to be another short update iteration. Like devices, new use cases, everything updates, and we will have to revisit everything that we did and say, okay, we need to add a few use cases, we need to add maybe a few operations. So it's not that we are defining now something that is going to be written in stone for the next 20 years. We're going to create an initial set so that we can create compliance testing for it. That's the goal. And this is actually written here when you look at compliance test that covers the profiles which are driven from the use cases by testing models. And the idea is, this is what Milan has on the wall behind him. We have an idea how to define a process which doesn't rely on having any kind of shared runtime or anything. We can share this process. The process creates a test package that includes golden references, and then you would be able to compare outputs of a device that wants to be compliant with the reference based on the criteria. And if it passes, you're compliant. And this entire thing has to be, again, collaborated with the other SIGs. But I see this establishing this mechanism as one of the important deliveries of this working group.
So for who would be, so are we going to analyze runtimes? Are we going to analyze end-to-end solutions?
Okay. So this is part of the process that we need to discuss. We need to describe. The idea is, in a nutshell, let's say that you have a model, you have inputs and you have outputs that you need to compare to, and you have a pass criteria. And it's the responsibility of the person or the company that wants to be compliant to give out a report. So he has a list of tests. It's his responsibility to run the test and to deliver a report. And it's ours or ONNX SIG responsibility to look at the report and to validate it. Say, okay, the report is fine. There needs to be a trust mechanism here. Okay. And also, this is the mechanism that exists in other organizations. There's kind of two techniques in the world. One technique is Microsoft technique of having certification labs. It's a very costly technique. The other technique, more common in the open source world, is a trust mechanism. We define tests. We define how an output log needs to look like. You deliver the log. We validate the log. And we say it's okay. It's compliant. So it's the responsibility of the person who wants to be compliant to know there's a trust mechanism here to give us an actual log of running the actual tests on his system. Does that answer the question?
Well, yes, it does. But I guess it's quite a interesting problem statement to venture into. I don't want to derail the discussion up front. I think as we go further in defining the aspects, then I can probably bubble up some of my opinion.
Sure. But by the way, keep in mind that the working group, the purpose of the working group is exactly to do these discussions and come up with recommendations. The purpose of the SIGs, in that case, it will be a modern zoo SIG and the operation SIG and whether there is a compliance SIG or not, to approve whatever we suggest. So it's not that what we suggest becomes a described process of ONNX. It is a recommendation of how to do something, and we will have to come out to these working groups, to these SIGs, and to present our proposal. So you have a wider range of audience that is reviewing these proposals.
Makes sense.
Okay, so the last section of the scope talks about collaboration with M&Perf organization. So ONNX is, at least the way that I and others perceive it, ONNX repo and organization is not about performance. It's about a way to represent models and more functionality and accuracy. So anything related to performance benchmarking probably is outside the scope of ONNX, but this is where the M&Perf organization comes into the picture. That M&Perf organization was created exactly to benchmark and to have a unified benchmarking framework. It's another repo. And our purpose is to collaborate with them so that they would be able to use ONNX models as one of their leading inputs to their testing package. Maybe we won't come to a point where the ONNX would be the only input to M&Perf. I don't know, maybe if everybody agrees. But we would like to collaborate with the Edge Inference Working Group, which is part of the M&Perf organization, to align on terminology and operation sets, everything that, and data types, so that it would suit their performance and benchmarking purposes.
So what is MLPerf's position on ONNX? Do they plan to publish benchmarks based off ONNX?
Yes, to my understanding, ONNX is one of the input sources for models to MLPerf.
And they have committed to it, and it's in the spec defined that they'll be working on some specific ONNX models.
I think
actually, I don't know. I don't think we can say that.
Yeah, that was my point. It appears on slides, it appears on some discussions, but the spec is now at version 0.5. So it's
Okay, so all I was trying to say is that we should also have a mitigation plan that if MLPerf does not prioritize ONNX, then we need to have some mitigation around MLPerf. Then we need to either find another partner, because there are plenty of other benchmarks available.
That's right. I agree with that. I mean, it seems like this is only one of the organizations that is doing profiling. Connection with MLPerf is potentially a good one because they also have this categorization of inference types, right? And somewhat aligned with our working group. So I think you're right. We'll have to explore and see if they don't intend to kind of actively and officially support the ONNX models, then yeah, our interest in working with them is probably not that relevant, right?
Yeah, just as a backup plan, right? Like we would really like to influence MLPerf, and we have all the right partners there and here. But in case it doesn't, we should just maybe say that we have identified these couple of other initiatives that we can collaborate with.
That's a valid, okay, point. I mean, I don't know if you want to identify anybody else, but maybe we can have a statement here or sentence clarifying that consider potentially other benchmarking organizations to work with.
Are you guys familiar with something called TLC or something? I'll dig it up, and it's more centered around Heavy Edge, that organization, and it looks into benchmarking end-to-end AI workloads.
What do you say the name is?
Can you type down the name?
Yeah, let me search for it and I'll send it over to you.
Okay.
I have somebody I know who is driving that effort, and he was pinging me on ONNX and some of the conformance things. So I'll put it in the chat window in a minute.
Okay.
Okay. Note, by the way, that the language here on this paragraph is examine collaboration. Maybe we should modify it to consider. Instead of say examine, say consider. And definitely add or at least add a sentence in the end, consider. Maybe we can just do it now, something like this.
It's called TPC. I'm putting in the chat window.
Okay.
This is a link for it. Can you guys see the link that I pasted?
Yeah. I see.
Yeah, it's more on a heavy edge kind of a thing, but
Yeah, I
I'm
remember
assuming
TPC is a pretty old school benchmarking. Am I right?
Well, AI is something new that they are venturing into.
All right.
But yeah, it's been there for a decade or so, or maybe even more. Yeah, it seems it was established in 1988. So one of my peers
that's
is
even older than me.
correct. So one of my peers is a chair of
Milan,
the.
I think
I'm somehow
AI
typing in the wrong window, right? Am I?
Yeah. Maybe okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. By the way, my intention is not to move anybody away from MLPerf. Of course, we want MLPerf. However, there are other competing standards. MLI are pushed by by Google, and
Yeah.
Google
By
is
the
a
way,
strong player.
there's
MLPerf too, right?
also benchmarks, well-known benchmarks in the world of mobile devices.
Okay.
Mudashi
AI Mark. AI Mark and yeah, something AI. AI Mark, yeah.
Yeah, AI Mark.
Okay. Well, no, I guess noted. I mean, definitely, we don't want to kind of lock ourselves into only one option, right?
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay, so moving on to this section that talks about collaboration, we added it on the previous meeting. So in terms of collaboration, we want to emphasize that we should avoid overlapping. In order to avoid it, we have to sync and collaborate with few potential ONNX work groups to realize what they're doing, to properly communicate what we are doing. So there's the quantization working group, there's the modern zoo SIG, compliance ZIG. My hope is that these working groups and SIGs would publish more information in the GitHub and in the Gitter channel, so it would be easier for us to track what they're doing.
So maybe action item maybe for us would be to initiate contact with chairs there, and kind of start kind of this that to their attention, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And also talk with the steering committee on more communication of what's happening in the meetings.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Now, if I basically translate the engagement with, let's say, a benchmarking organization, is our goal or objective is to use the guidance from that benchmark to help define the profile? Is that the end objective?
It's a good question. I kind of envisioned it as a more of us describing what's covered by edge profiles and which type of operations and which models are going to be in part of the compliance. Sorry. So from the MLPerf organization point of view, it's going to simplify things by saying, if these are the models that ONNX guarantees to work on edge devices, so these models can be a very good starting point for the benchmarking, because we know these models are guaranteed to work on any device which classifies itself
That's right.
as edge. But there is definitely room for kind of a feedback once we deliver. Let's say we do some work, we describe these profiles, we describe the models, and then we, a few months from now, we communicate to the MLPerf edge group. We can do it kind of every month or every 2 months. So we show them our intermediate results, and they can give feedback and say, hey, wait a second, why don't you add this operation or so? So it can be some kind of a bi-directional feeding process.
Got it.
Well, kind of two things. My concern is that some companies which are not part of ONNX but are still part of MLPerf are going to give us some inputs which are going to slightly move us from our direction. So my point is, if you want to influence whatever the ONNX Edge working group is doing, you should be part of ONNX. You should be in the ONNX Edge working group meetings and so on. So if there is some feedback coming from the MNPerf attendees, my recommendation to them would be go through the ONNX channels to give that feedback.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Because we're creating a system which is very open in ways to give feedback. You can put it in Gitter, you can open an issue or even do a comment on documents. So the system is very open. Like we don't close it to anybody. There's no reason why someone who is attending the MNPerf meeting, he sees something that we present, he wants to give feedback. There's no reason for him why not to give that feedback for the ONNX channels. By channels, I mean not just the Gitter channel, but issue, whatever mechanism you would like to do. Attend the meeting.
But I know there are many Google guys in MLPerf. What if they want to influence ONNX? They want to take the lead and just listen some guys in our community and direct in their way. What if that happened?
Well,
it's a good point.
It is something we'll need to reevaluate. I mean, maybe that goes.
Because Google is not in our community.
This is not then if that org turns out to be not interested to really support ONNX as input formats or whatever, then which I would doubt. But anyways, if they do, then it's then it's not working well for ONNX community, and so we need to find potentially different partner.
All right.
Yeah.
But to your point, if they just want to give some feedback and they don't want to give it for ONNX channels, probably we can someone from the group can pick it up and put it into ONNX. Like the recommendation path would be do it for the ONNX repo or Gitter channels or whatever. If you don't want to do it and you want to use another active contributor to do it, okay, that's fine. The goal is to gather feedback. The goal is not to be open to and listen, I would say. Okay, so talking about organization, so Edge is a working group. We're going to gather requirements, documentations, whatever. We also talked about code, not limit ourselves only to documents. And we're going to put everything. We have a directory under the working group repository. So the goal is that everything that we do, everything that people want to either contribute, discuss, whatever, it has to go into that repo. Right now we have some Google documents. I think it's also a possible mechanism if people prefer to put documents. It's also happening in other work groups. So discussion materials can be a document which is inside Google Docs and you just provide a link, for example. Or you can convert it to an MD file. We have a dedicated Gitter room, which is actually, it's very nice, people. It's becoming really active. It's very good. I think us and the training Gitter are the most active ones right now. Very nice. We're going to have periodic meetings, like the one that we're having today. It is open to any active contributor. Actually, it's even open to anyone. You can all. We publish the link in Zoom. Anyone that wants to join can join. We promised that we're going to give notification and agenda a few days before. So far, we're managing to do it. It's Milan's keeping an eye on that. And last thing, just as we opened that section, the recommendations are going to be delivered to the relevant SIGs. That's the part of the open governance definition of what this working group needs to do. So maybe just to emphasize one thing, this working group is, in a sense, it only pushes things into the working group repo. Everything has to be inside the repo. So when we finish and we have deliveries, even if these deliveries are code, the code that we do is inside that repo of the working groups. It's the purpose of the SIGs to pull this code and put it into the major ONNX repo. So we can initiate a pull request, but it's not our role to push into the main ONNX repo. Just to clarify. Okay, so talking about deliveries, what we're actually going to do. So 2 types. One of them, sorry, someone wanted to say something? Okay, cool. Documents and code. So in terms of documents, this is slightly more detailed on what we talked about in the scope. Now we're kind of mapping the scope into deliveries, into a more detailed list. Definition of edge, definition of what a profile contains. If you're familiar with the presentation that we kind of gave, we show how you can talk of a few different vectors of defining a profile in terms of compute, in terms of connectivity, in terms of security. There's many vectors, and we're trying to capture and define the essence of what makes an IoT device different than a mobile device, different than a edge infrastructure server. Of course, we understand that it's different, but we want to map it into vectors which are either can be represented by either numbers or can be represented by some kind of wording. Once we do that, we have a clear mechanism to define profiles and to describe which use cases or scenarios map into each one of these profiles. Another thing that was not mentioned so far in the SOC is the work with the quantization working group. Quantization is very important to edge devices which are more low power, low compute, like mobile and IoT. Over there, quantization is a major use case, and we have to make sure that whatever ONNX standard, the ONNX container, the ONNX operations, whatever data types, whatever they define on quantization is going to fit what we believe quantization is for edge devices, so that when we come to describe compliance, we can talk about compliance of quantized models. So data types, representation, quantized operations, and the last thing is the accuracy impact on models. So that's the collaboration with the quantization working group. I don't know what form it's going to take yet. Maybe a document, maybe a set of issues, pull request or something, but we're going to start kicking off this process probably. Yeah, I mean, maybe in the next few weeks, kick off this activity. The last item on the list is to collaborate with Modern Zoo and operator standardization SIGs to define the compliance process, the workflow, and what is a test package, a compliant test package. For example, let's take Inception v3 or MobileNet v2. Okay, we want to say, here is a compliance package for MobileNet v2. And then we say something like edge device, which has a profile of mobile phone, has to meet these test packages, and one of them would be the MobileNet v2 test package. So how do we create this test package? What does it contain? What is the pass criteria? All of this has to be done in collaboration with the other SIGs. And the result, I hope, will be actually, here are our test packages. And here is a document that connects test packages to profiles in terms of compliance. So that's the document part. Regarding code, I think this is kind of an evolving thing. It's a work in progress. I don't know what type of code we will have to provide, but as an example, let's say we define it as part of the compliance in terms of accuracy. We define some metric. You know, those well-known metrics like top K1 or top 5, but maybe we will decide that we want to define a slightly different metric, or we want to standardize how top 1 is measured between a golden output and the output that wants to be compliant. That may translate to code. And that code can be something that we agree that is correctly capturing that accuracy testing, and then we provide it into our repo, and we give it to the other SIGs to pull it as a recommendation. That's one example. I don't know, maybe we'll have other examples.
Just FYI, we have 2 more minutes. I guess, not sure if you want to close the meeting right now or give a guidance for the next one, because we're running out of time. Basically, we want to put some goals and milestones. That is the next chapter. What we can achieve in a reasonable time. Sorry, Offer, to interrupt, but I need to kind of steer the meeting a little bit. So,
sure. So maybe just to finalize it, let's say we would give the other contributors the ability to comment, do whatever they want for the next 2 weeks, but then put a clear deadline of saying,
yes, the goal.
Next meeting,
yes,
we want to
close it.
I don't know if vote. We want to agree that this is the statement of work, and we give it to the steering committee.
Yes, yes, that will be a goal, definitely. That will be. I will capture that in the meeting minutes, then so that not later than next meeting, we would like to define this and agree on statement of work. Okay, so basically there are a couple of these last 2 sections, goals and milestones, and maybe we can debate next time what is practical and achievable and what else we can change here. And exit criteria is really another spin on deliverables. Really, it's basically saying that delivering these documents and whatever we agree to do is exit criteria for the group, right? But yeah, anyways, please comment in next 2 weeks if you find time, and then the goal is the next meeting we close on this and agree that with the statement of work and then submit to steering committee. About the recordings of these meetings, well, unfortunately, I'm still working with Prasant from Microsoft about how to park and where to put these recordings. And so that's why the last recording is not posted yet, just FYI. But shortly, I'm hoping in the next couple of days we'll sort this out, and then we'll have them up and available. And obviously, I'll post the links on the Gitter channel and so on. Okay, so that's it for today. We are out of time. It's 9 o'clock. So thank you everybody for joining and participating. Let's keep it up, and as we discussed. Okay, thanks everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, and Bogdan. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.